You will no doubt have seen the this variable used in JavaScript, but it can be confusing as it seems to take on different values at different times. Be confused no longer. If you watch this video, you'll fully understand the this variable in JavaScript. So just a quick example of what I mean. Here we have an object, person. It has a property, name. It also has a property, sayHello, which is a function which outputs hello and the name to the console. You will see here we are doing this.name to access the name property. So we do person.sayHello and run, and of course hello Tom gets output. So let me take you through what's going on here. By doing person.sayHello, we are saying call the sayHello function, which is a property of person in the context of person. So what is context? This is a very important concept in JavaScript. Every function when called has a context which it is called in. The context is an object, and that object is the value of the this variable within the function. So for person.sayHello, the context is person. So when sayHello is called, this is the person object. So the value of the this variable is the person object. And that person object has the property name, so the value of the name gets output. But wait, I said every function will have a context when it is run. So what about functions that haven't been defined on an object and called on an object by doing object.function like we did with person.sayHello? Do they also have a context? Yes, they do. But what will it be, you ask? So let's find out. So I'm going to define a simple function called foo, and it console.logs this, or the current context. Then we call foo, and what will be logged to the console. When we run it, this huge object gets logged. So we scroll all the way up, all the way to the top of the output, and we see that the this value is the window object, the global window object of the browser. When in the browser, the window object is the top level global object for your application. When a function is called in a global context, like foo was, without explicitly being called on a given object, its context will be the global object, which in the browser is the window object, and is the global object if you're running in Node. The really important thing to get, and where most of the confusion comes surrounding context and the this variable, is that its value is not static. It is not set when the function is defined, but rather when it is called. This means the value can change depending on how you call a function. With the person example, you'd imagine it to always be the value of person, as we define the function within the person object. But since context is determined when a function is called, not when it is defined, this is not necessarily the case. I'm going to prove this by showing you some ways to change the value of this in sayHello. Let's assign sayHello to a function called hello. We then call hello as a function. And the result is hello JS-bin output, which is a bit weird. So what's going on here? Well, the function sayHello is no longer being called on the person object. We have assigned it to the global variable hello, and we are calling that hello in the global context. So in this case, this variable will take on the value of the global window object, and it turns out the global window object has a name property on it, and the name is JS-bin output. We can explicitly tell JavaScript to execute a function with a given context. Functions are themselves objects with properties. One of the properties on all functions is a function called call. So if we do hello.call and pass in person as an argument, call will call the function using the argument given, in this case person, as the context. So now when we run this, we get the first name printed correctly because it's using person as the value of this. Note we can pass any object to call, so if we pass in an object with the property of name set to Jake, and we run, we get hello Jake. So that object that we've passed in there is being used as the context, the value of this. If you'll remember earlier, I said that the context isn't static, but decided based on how the function is called. There is actually a way to change this, and this is another function on the function object called bind. So what we're going to do is we're going to assign person.sayHello the value of calling bind on person.sayHello and passing person as an argument. We then call the hello function, and when we run it, we get hello Tom. What is happening here is that bind returns a new version of the function it's called on that has its context bound to the object we pass bind as an argument. So now sayHello will always use person as its context or value of this, even if it's called from a global context like we do after we assign it to hello. This here is an interesting case. We have an outer function foo, and there's a function called bar defined inside it which logs this to the console. We then call bar, and then outside of it all we call foo. When we call foo, what is the value of this? The tricky thing here is that bar is not defined nor called globally, but instead within the function foo, which has its own non-global scope. When we run it, we get the window object as the value of this. So this happens because nested functions like this get called in the same context as the outer function. So when we call foo, it is in the global context. So bar is also called in the global context. I hope this clears up some of the confusion around the this variable. It works differently to this in other languages, and so it can baffle many people. Hopefully now you won't be one of them.